What if I told you that Kirk Franklin and Bishop T.D. Jakes, two of the most well-known figures in gospel and religion, may have been secretly at odds for years? We are talking about secret interviews, side-eye moments at public events, and now explosive reactions from those closest to them. Now, rumors from gospel circles are coming to the surface, and fans are starting to wonder, did something go down? The truth may permanently alter your perspective of the gospel world, therefore you'll want to hear it. Kirk Franklin and Bishop T.D. Jakes are two of the most well-known figures in the gospel music and ministry industries. Bishop Jake, one of our generation's most potent spiritual speakers, and Kirk, the groundbreaking gospel musician who permanently altered the sound of church music. These two appear to be natural allies at first glance. They have performed together, praised each other in interviews, and served as a contemporary example of Black Christian leadership. However, something seems strange lately. Subtle changes have been observed by both fans and insiders. Shoutouts are oddly absent from social media posts these days. Previously complimentary interviews between the two men have now become chilly or non-existent. Furthermore, gospel insiders and close friends have recently begun to divulge little but telling data that raise the possibility of a secret falling out that neither side is ready to discuss in public. We'll piece together the hints in this in-depth analysis using event footage, podcast snippets, gospel artist responses, and even exclusive behind-the-scenes conversations. Was Bishop Jake's authority in the religious sphere questioned by Kirk Franklin? Was there anything Kirk said or did that caused Jake to distance himself from him? Or is a larger rift that is poised to blow out being covered up by the gospel community? We're going to go over everything in detail, so stay tuned. What has been subtly simmering beneath the surface will surprise you. And believe me, it goes deeper than this. We must first understand what initially made this friendship so strong before discussing what went wrong. Kirk Franklin and Bishop T.D. Jakes were regarded as the cornerstones of progressive Black Christianity for more than 20 years. With songs like Stomp, Imagine Me, and Looking for You, Kirk transformed gospel music by fusing traditional sounds with hip-hop, R&B, and soul. His music helped to re-engage millions of young people in the church. He was more than just a gospel performer. He was a movement that was unapologetically spiritual and urban. In addition to his stirring sermons, Bishop T.D. Jakes was also changing the perception of the Black pastor at the time with his best-selling books, movies, conferences, and extensive outreach initiatives. The Potter's House, his church, grew to be one of America's biggest and most significant. Bishop Jake was altering the gospel's platform if Kirk was altering its voice, and the two openly supported one another for years. Kirk frequently attended Potter's House events, including Bishop Jake's Megapest. Kirk was frequently hailed by Jake as having a genuine passion for ministry and the ability to reach large crowds in a manner that few preachers could. Kirk even referred to Bishop Jake as a spiritual father figure in 2010. And guess who stood up for Kirk Franklin when he was criticized for his crossover sound or secular collaborations? You're correct, Bishop Jake. They appeared to be in agreement publicly, theologically, and musically. However, as time passed, something began to change. Silently, the once unbreakable relationship began to break. And the signs were there if you were looking closely. Less frequent appearances together, followed by a notable lull on each other's social media accounts. Then came the Leadership Summit incident, a moment that gospel fans still discuss today. Something that we'll dissect shortly. Here's the twist that surprised insiders before we get there, though. Kirk started to have doubts about the established hierarchy of church leadership. Additionally, others claim that Jake was the direct target of such remarks. Is that the case, though? Or was it a more general systemic criticism? Things start to get extremely intriguing at this point. In September 2022, Dallas, Texas hosted the Global Leadership Summit, a well-known religious gathering. Kirk Franklin was among the many prominent Christian influencers, pastors, writers, worship leaders, and others in the lineup. Many were unaware that Bishop T.D. Jakes was also present, but he chose to remain out of the spotlight by sitting quietly in the VIP area. Kirk had not only been asked to perform, but also to speak, and he arrived with his usual audacious vigor. However, Kirk abruptly shifted from music to criticism throughout his speech. This is what he said as he began to fiercely challenge the power systems in the modern church. Empires, not communities, are being built by some of the strongest voices in our pulpits. Rather than being famous, we were supposed to be shepherds. Silence fell throughout the room, followed by apprehensive applause. Kirk continued after it. This wasn't a direct criticism, but he went on to remark, "If you can't touch the people, if you only show up for red carpets and cameras, then what are you really building?" Although no names were spoken, the implications were obvious due to the setting, tone, and timing. For a moment, the cameras panned to the VIP area. Bishop Jake attempted to maintain a neutral face, but according to witnesses, he leaned in to talk to his assistant and departed soon after Kirk's comments. Is it a coincidence? Perhaps. This is where it becomes more spicy though. 2 weeks later, Jake organized a panel debate on black church leadership. There is a difference between calling out and calling up, he added, in what many saw as a covert retort. Fans noticed the tension right away, and comment sections were ablaze with speculation. Was that about Kirk? Is this the beginning of a feud? Why haven't either of them addressed it directly? Some gospel bloggers even started analyzing the body language in their previous appearances together, comparing more recent footage that looked, well, icy to earlier interviews full of brotherhood and laughter. At that same summit, Kirk was supposed to perform 2 songs after his talk, but he only did one before leaving abruptly. Backstage sources whispered that Kirk was clearly unhappy and frustrated with the way things went, even going so far as to say, "This ain't what I came here for." Nothing has been confirmed, of course, but for those who were paying close attention, this was the first obvious indication that something had changed. If you're wondering if this was a one-time argument, get ready, because in Section 3, we'll delve into the private remarks made by gospel insiders, including one artist who unintentionally revealed everything on Instagram Live. The gospel world was already buzzing by this point, with people discussing the Leadership Summit moment in private chat rooms, church group texts, and even among some celebrity choirs. Kirk and Bishop Jake remained silent in public, but their silence only made the rumors more loud. Then, thanks to a late-night Instagram Live from none other than gospel singer Isaac Curry, Kirk Franklin's longtime friend and collaborator, things took a different turn. When Isaac went live at around 1:00 a.m. one Sunday morning answering fan questions informally, no one expected him to drop a bomb, but he did. If you're a serious gospel fan, you know that Isaac and Kirk have a long history together, dating back to their time touring together and working on choir arrangements. One fan commented, "Yo, when's Kirk and Bishop Jake's doing another event together?" Isaac hesitated. He turned away from the camera, laughed, and then whispered to himself, That season might be over, Chile." The comments went wild, with many saying, "Wait, what? What do you mean by that? Have they fallen out?" Realizing he had just stirred the pot, Isaac tried to clean it up, saying, Nah. They are good. I mean, life happens. Seasons change, that's all." However, it was too late. Within hours, screen recordings went viral, and a number of gospel blogs, including Larry Reed Live and The Gospel Truth, ticked it up, published them. Suddenly, what had been a whisper turned into a topic of open speculation, and Isaac wasn't the only one. According to a Dallas-based worship leader who asked not to be named but has worked with both men, there were behind-the-scenes confirmations. "It's not beef," he told one newspaper, "but the impact is real, albeit silent. It resembles tension more." Kirk thinks the church is getting too involved in politics. According to Bishop, his unpredictability jeopardizes certain relationships. Although they still show respect for one another, things have changed. Even further when another gospel singer, who was a backup on a number of Kirk's tours. Everyone knows that something changed. Potter's House has stopped sending out invitations. Kirk doesn't mention anything else from the pulpit. It's freezing. It gets considerably messier from here. Kirk's latest Bet Awards performance, in which he gave a spoken word piece about broken churches and broken individuals being overlooked, is perceived by some fans as yet another covert attack. A stained glass window behind him slowly cracked as he yelled, "The church has failed us before, but I will not fail you now." These were strong words, but some people found them to be pointed, especially in light of Bishop Jake's earlier that week's headlines for his exclusive meeting with a number of megachurch pastors and political figures, which infuriated younger religious leaders who felt ignored and excluded. Was Kirk criticizing him once more? Was he resisting the status quo by using the Bet stage? The kicker is this. Bishop Jake shared a mysterious message on X, formerly Twitter, a few days after the Bet Awards. Ministry turns into your performance when receiving praise turns into an addiction. For those who could read between the lines, the message was obvious despite the lack of names or tags. If rumors were stoked by the Leadership Summit and fueled by the Instagram Live, it was Kirk Franklin's participation on the Truth podcast that ignited the entire gospel community. Kirk joined the well-known Christian podcast, Truth Table, in early 2023. The show is hosted by three black female theologians who are known for promoting challenging and frequently awkward discussions on theology, church hurt, race, and systemic challenges in the Christian community. That podcast had never featured a gospel performer of Kirk's caliber. Fans realized right away that this would not be another praise break moment when it was released. Kirk dropped bomb after bomb in the 75-minute interview. Let's dissect it. He began with the building of the church. In many areas, the integrity of the church institution has been compromised. More than people, power is being protected. Even though Kirk didn't mention specific people, his discussion of megachurch culture was quickly understood by the audience. And that frequently leads to one name in the gospel community, Bishop T.D. Jake Jakes. The big stunner came next. I've admired several pastors for years, but today I see them supporting oppressive institutions for our people and engaging in political games behind the pulpit. That is manipulation, not ministry. Boom. Through the speakers, you could practically hear people's jaws dropping. Additionally, Kirk was asked directly by the hosts, "Have you had to distance yourself from certain leaders because of these issues?" Let's just say that I've discovered that some people's silence is more powerful than their encouragement. That was the time, everyone. That one comment sparked a flurry of responses on several gospel platforms, including YouTube reaction videos, TikToks, and Instagram Reels. People started analyzing who he was talking about, and the majority of them pointed directly at Bishop T.D. Jake. This is the reason. Jake's support for more conservative programs had grown, particularly during election seasons. His recent private talks with influential politicians drew criticism from younger Christians for his lack of transparency. Most contentious of all, Jake had not openly defended Kirk throughout the criticism that followed the release of his audio recording with his estranged son. That was the last straw for a lot of fans. How could a guy who once referred to Kirk as his spiritual son fail to support him in his hour of greatest need? Gospel musicians react. Several gospel musicians and influencers responded to the podcast episode without naming specific people, but their tone was clear. "We can't preach kingdom and build empires at the same time," Jonathan McReynolds wrote in an article that has since been removed. Even C.C. Winans, who always stays quiet about controversies, published a vague remark. Jackie Hill Perry reposted a clip from Kirk's interview with the caption, "Let the church be the church, not a political stage. God is not perplexed." As if that weren't enough, a week later, Kirk's podcast episode was covertly taken down from several platforms. No warning, no explanation. Some supporters think Bishop Jake or one of his influential media associates may have stepped in behind the scenes. Some believe Kirk asked for it himself in order to defuse the situation. In any case, it vanished, adding even more uncertainty to an already chaotic scenario. Here, however, it becomes even more profound. The history of conflict between Kirk Franklin and Bishop T.D. Jake Jakes is now quite evident. From that bombshell podcast that completely upended gospel circles to the leadership summit moment and subtle social media jabs. The thing that most people are missing, though, is this. This is more than a personal disagreement. This religious and generational conflict is taking place right in front of everyone. This debate is fundamentally about who gets to define the Black church and what it is becoming. Let's dissect that. The voice of the generation that has been disrupted is Kirk Franklin. Kirk is no longer only a musician. As a cultural theologian, he speaks to the soul of a generation that is emotionally linked to God but feels scorched by religion. Kirk has exposed church abuse and spiritual manipulation in recent years through interviews, performances, and social media. In this church, have frank conversations about sexual abuse, father wounds, and mental health. Criticize the way that megarchs have turned into branding machines while neglecting issues like police brutality and social poverty. Engage in discussions on deconstruction, a concept that many elder religious leaders dislike. His message: your church isn't the one Jesus built if it can't accommodate broken people. Younger Christians find great resonance in that. However, Kirk's strategy seems rebellious, even dangerous to some more senior officials. Defender of the ancient church order, Bishop T.D. Jake Jakes. Bishop T.D. Jake is no lightweight, let's be clear. He is a spiritual giant who has impacted the community and inspired millions. His influence is evident in everything he has done, from starting events for women's empowerment to feeding families to reforming prisons. However, Jake has come under fire in recent years for being overly associated with politicians who are thought to be out of touch with current affairs. Despite his platform's expansion into Hollywood and international media, he remains silent on issues of systematic racism and police violence, refusing to discuss LGBTQ+ Christians, mental health, or church pain. Even though he is still regarded by many as their spiritual father, detractors claim that his ministry has institutionalized safety and is now more concerned with maintaining power than with addressing injustice. Kirk holds to a grassroots, people-first gospel in which song, honesty, and openness are more important than hierarchy. This highlights the underlying problem of vision colliding with two radically different conceptions of what kingdom leadership looks like. Bishop Jake continues to support legacy, structure, and order in which institutions are safeguarded and spiritual authority is distributed top-down. In a world where everyone wants a platform and few want to be planted, Bishop Jake's remark during one of his sermons recently brought that tension to a climax. Fans quickly made the connection as he continued, saying, "We're creating a generation of influencers who are not anchored in the Word, and when storms come, they fall." In the same time, Kirk Franklin was sharing pictures of himself in recovery facilities, skate parks, and group homes, frequently captioning them, "This is my church." Two spiritual leaders, two enormous platforms, two very different goals. Furthermore, the gospel sector is beginning to divide along such lines, the reaction of the industry. Some well-known gospel singers have subtly taken sides. Kirk's lane has become more popular among musicians like Tasha Cobb's Leonard Doe and Maverick City Music. Bold social commentary combined with unvarnished, genuine adoration. Bishop Jake's more conventional, refined ministry paradigm is nevertheless firmly allied with musicians like Paula White and Jamar Jones, who are still closely associated with the Potter's House. The change has even been noted by producers. "There's a quiet divide happening," one insider told Gospel City magazine. Kirk's approach scares labels because it's unpredictable, but it's finding people the church has lost.